watching Gearz, brought to you by Holly Performance Products. Fuel your passion. And Cornwell Tools, the choice of professionals.
In the long history of the automobile, every once in a while, something will come along, a new invention, a new design, a new innovation that completely changes the course of the industry. Because of that, what started out as a simple horseless carriage quickly multiplied into the pickup truck and the sports car and the SUV and the sedan. All kinds of other models that were designed to fulfill a specific purpose. And that's great. Very practical, very usable, very sensible. But if you hadn't noticed, the American spirit is not just practical and usable. It's also adventurous and competitive and a little bit rebellious. And that created an automotive genre that was completely new. Something whose sole purpose was to completely obliterate all the other cars on the road through sheer power and sound and presence. Yeah, I'm talking about the muscle car. At least that's what we call it now. But that's not what it started out as. It started out as something completely different. Take a look. Back in the day, if you wanted to go fast, you built a hot rod in your garage out of whatever surplus parts you could find. Now, most people frowned on these homemade hack jobs.
And they found the faults all right.
Because they were dangerous and loud and undignified. But they were a heck of a lot of fun, and they were fast. And Americans like to go fast. So by the mid-1950s, the hot rod movement was in full swing. Of course, the auto manufacturers, they weren't too keen on young people spending their hard-earned money souping up old jalopies, so they thought, hey, why don't we offer hotter engines in our newer cars? And they did just that with the 55 Chevy. And that opened the door, just a bit, for the OEMs to put more power under the foot of the American public. But these weren't considered muscle cars, not yet. That name was created when a young executive at Pontiac named John DeLorean broke the rules and stuffed a massive engine in a small sedan, dared to call it the GTO, and dared to sell it to the public. Did I mention rebellious here? Automotive hysteria ensued and the muscle car was born about the same time that the Beatles were hitting the airwaves. Now, a lot of people think that these early muscle cars are nothing compared to what's out there today. And that's not really a fair comparison. Because you have to remember, drag racing was the preferred form of racing back then. So muscle cars were set up to do that, go in a straight line. So the steering wasn't very good, and the brakes were minimal at best, and suspension was soft and bouncy, and all that power was being funneled through skinny bias ply tires. So anytime you mashed the pedal, you were in for a ride. And seat belts? What the heck were those? Nobody had seat belts. And if you had them, you didn't wear them. By the late 60s, things were really getting out of control, with a full-fledged horsepower race going on for the youth of America. Each model had to be louder and more flamboyant, with more cubic inches and more horsepower. Names like Mach 1 and Cuda and Roadrunner and Cougar and Camaro and Javelin, Judge and Boss were meant to intimidate the masses, and loud mufflers and bright colors announced the arrival of a muscle car on the scene, like a roaring, strutting lion, or a peacock, depending on what was under the hood. But that doesn't mean that the 60s cars were just for show. No, these suckers would haul. Anytime you drop 500 horsepower into a fairly light car, you got the potential for some serious street car action. By the early 70s, most muscle cars had pretty much become street legal race cars. Almost all of them had wings, some bigger than others, but they all had one thing in common. They were all based off of a basic sedan. And ironically, the manufacturers take the same approach with the modern muscle cars. Just like the original Daytona was based off a '69 Charger, the current Daytona is based off of the current Charger. The question is, which one would you rather drive?
An original muscle car has all the classic bravado of the era. And when you uncork one, the resulting fury and tire smoke is the stuff of legends. However, the handling and braking feel almost prehistoric compared to a modern car truck. And the interiors, well, they were basically a seat, a steering wheel, and a gas pedal. Not to mention that some of these cars are approaching crazy levels of value in the collector market. So people have started to get a little hesitant about driving their original muscle cars properly. This gave rise to the resto mod movement, which is basically a hot rod muscle car.
The proper Bandit launch is about 3,000 to 4,000 on RPM. See there? See where we're sitting? Got your clutch down here, and you got your shifter, and you... Oh, yeah!
It's kind of amazing how things come full circle, isn't it? But the story doesn't stop there.
Wind that thing up, man.
With thousands of hot rodders and gearheads stuffing modern LS, Coyote, and Hemi engines into classic muscle cars, the aftermarket wasn't far behind with supplying plenty of state-of-the-art suspensions and brakes. And even complete frames to make classic cars go faster and handle better. Of course, that made the OEMs start to think, hey, why don't we offer hotter engines in our newer cars and try to grab some of that market? And just like before, a whole new muscle car era was launched with performance and handling that the originals could only dream about. The interiors are plush and comfortable and crammed with the latest tech, and a whole generation has grown up watching them on the screen, so their legend is secure. But even so, there seems to be an edge in the original cars that just can't be captured.
I'm after you. You're talking to me? You're talking to me? Talk to the Hemi!
And it is as different and refreshing today as it was 50 years ago.
So, there it is, the best of two muscle car eras. The same car 50 years apart. One has become a legendary collector's item, the other you can drive every day if you want to. So, which one is best? Well, it's hard to say. But when you look at the past and add in what they're doing now, man, I can't wait to see what they do in the next 50 years.
And now, Brake Tech, brought to you by Bear Brakes. Brakes without limits.
When you're laying out the brake system on your project, there's a lot of little details that you can mess up, and nobody seems to want to talk about them. Now, those little details won't necessarily leave you with no brakes, but they can definitely make your brakes not work to their full potential, no matter how big your rotors and calipers are. Now, we've already talked about the importance of picking the right master cylinder. Today, we're going to talk about the brake pedal and the brake pedal ratio. Now, I know a lot of you are probably thinking, man, it's a pedal, you push it. So just grab something from a junkyard and put it on. Unfortunately, that's the approach that a lot of people take, and that's why a lot of their brakes don't work right. This is what's going on. Just like you use a longer handle to give you more or less leverage on a bolt or a pry bar, power and manual brakes require a different pedal ratio to give you the right leverage to help you stop the car. Here's the basic formula. A power brake vehicle needs a pedal ratio of about 4:1, which means you need 4 times the distance from the pad to the pivot point than you have from the pivot point to the push rod mounting hole. Now, on a manual brake vehicle, you need 6:1. It needs more leverage. So you're talking 6 times the distance from the pad to the pivot point than you have from the pivot point to the push rod mounting hole. Here's a diagram on how to measure it. Now, based on this formula, don't be surprised if you have to drill another hole in the arm of the pedal to get the ratio right. Now, fortunately, a lot of vehicles came from the factory with the option of power or manual brakes, and those will have 2 holes in the arm. So you just need to match them up to whatever brakes you're using. Now, I know a lot of you guys are probably thinking, oh, come on, does this really matter? I mean, the vehicle's still going to stop no matter where you mount the push rod on the pedal, right? Well, it'll stop, but not very well, because if you use a 6:1 ratio with power brakes, your brakes are going to be extremely sensitive, making smooth, even stops a real challenge. If you use a 4:1 ratio with manual brakes, you're going to have to push the pedal a lot harder than you should have to get the vehicle to stop, creating a potentially dangerous situation.
Now go find yourself a new friend.
So, as you can see, getting your brake pedal ratio right is an important part to putting together a quality brake system. Here's the formula and the diagram again, just in case you missed it.
Tool Tech, brought to you by Cornwell Tools, the choice of professionals.
With today's modern vehicles and projects, it seems like there is a specialty tool for everything. And that's great for those of us that spend our lives in the shop working on stuff. But it seems like there is one area that has been overlooked, and that is how to remove high-tension bolts in tight areas, like on pulleys and crankshafts, power steering pumps, that kind of thing. Now, the typical approach is to try to come in with an impact wrench or a breaker bar. But as you know, there's not a lot of room to get in here, especially on newer vehicles. So you end up having to disassemble half the engine bay just to get to the bolt. Especially on imports with small 4- and 6-cylinder engines. Well, fortunately, I've got a tool here that's going to change all that. This is called the power bar, and we got it from Cornwell, and it's designed to reach into those tight areas and knock those nuts and bolts loose and reinstall them. Now, take a look at this. You see, you got a long handle here, and it goes all the way through to the end that you can hit with a hammer. Of course, you got a place here for your hand, and you have a protector in case your aim's not very good. Then down here on this end, you have this unique spinning apparatus and a place for a socket. Now, this is how it works. You take your socket, snap it into place, then place the socket on the bolt with the handle located to the side of the direction you want the bolt to rotate. In this case, we're going to loosen the bolt so the handle is on the left side. Then just strike the handle with a sledgehammer. The handle transfers the impact directly to the bolt and breaks it loose. It's that simple. To reinstall the bolt, just reverse the process. This is such a simple solution to a common problem, and it can save you hours of unnecessary disassembly. Now, granted, you may not use this very much, but when you need it, it will rapidly become the most popular tool in your box because it does a job, and that's what makes a good tool.
And now, Parts Bin.
You know, one of the biggest threats to your vehicle is not rust or damage or even sitting for a long time. No, it's those little furry rodents that like to chew up your wiring and your upholstery while you're in the house sleeping. And it doesn't matter if your car's brand new or if it's a classic. The mice will be glad to chew it up. So what do? Traps? Poison? A big fat cat? Those might help, but those come with their own sets of problems. No, what you need is mouse blocker. Check it out. This ingenious device emits a sound that will drive mice and rats and squirrels, rabbits crazy and away from your car. You have several choices here. The classic runs off the vehicle battery and puts out 85 decibels of sound to the animal and is great for tractors, mowers, UTVs as well. The Pro steps it up with a wall plug and 3 settings that will run up to 115 decibels. And it adds strobe lights too, so you have shadows and movement that makes animals run the other way. There's nothing more frustrating than having mice chew up your car or truck. And if you never want to have to deal with this again, you need to check out the mouse blocker. There are very few things cooler than a vintage Corvette, except for one with a 4-speed in it. And even cooler than that would be one with a 5-speed in it. But that would require cutting up the car, right? Not anymore, because American Powertrain has come out with a ProFit TKX 5-speed transmission kit for the classic C1, C2, and C3 Corvettes. Now check this out. Obviously, the heart of the system is this new Tremec TKX 5-speed transmission that hits that magic sweet spot between the old classic Muncie 4-speed and the massive Magnum 6-speed. But it doesn't stop there. No, American Powertrain modifies the shifter location so it comes up in the stock location in the stock console. So you don't have to modify the console, you don't have to modify the tunnel, everything bolts right in. You even get a Corvette style shifter and gear indicator, so nobody's going to know you have 5 gears unless they look really closely. Then of course you get a performance clutch, pressure plate, and flywheel. You have all of the hardware well laid out so you can put it in. You get a new bell housing, you even get a new drive shaft. So if your Corvette currently has a stick, this is a direct bolt in. If you're converting from an automatic, American Powertrain even has the pedals to do that. So if you're tired of the lack of gear options in your 55 through 82 Corvette, 5 forward speeds is now possible with the ProFit TKX 5-speed system from American Powertrain.
What are you working on? Brought to you by Woodward Fabrication, selling quality metalworking equipment since 1966.
Today's What Are You Working On is a little bit of a departure from what we usually show you, but it definitely shows you what people are working on out there. Now it comes from Bill Pinch, and he's right down the road in Cleveland, Tennessee, and they have an 8-lane oval racing track. Well, they had some water damage and it destroyed their track. So they had to find another one. So this is what he came up with. It was down the road. He managed to get it for a good price, but it needed to be restored. So he said the work began. He tore it apart, just like a vehicle. He had to redo the wiring, he had to redo the surface, had to redo all the contacts and everything. You can see the work that went into it. And he says now that the track is done, it gets plenty of use as the racers turn thousands of laps each week in their novice, stock car, and dirt late model programs. So yeah, these guys are serious about this. He said they actually want to put in a drag strip and hopefully a road course as well, which is the beginning of where most gearheads get started. So this is cool stuff. It just goes to show you that you can be working on anything. So Bill, to recognize such a cool project, we hooked up with our buddies at Woodward Fab. We're going to give you one of these tubing notchers because I know you got a project out there that you could use a tubing notcher on. We're also going to give you one of our V8 Interceptor t-shirts and a project planning book. This will keep you on track on whatever project that you're working on. We're going to give you a Holley gift card to help offset the cost of whatever project you're working on. and we're going to top it off with a Sergeant Rock die cast. Now, for the rest of you guys, if you want to get in on this, get your project featured on the show, man, you got to send it to us. Go to our website, go to Gearz Nation, and submit it into what are you working on. The website's also the place to find out more information on any products you may have seen on the show, any Gearz merchandise, and how to join Gearz Nation so you can stream any of our episodes commercial free. Also, don't forget to check us out on Amazon Prime, where you can watch past and current seasons of Gearz and check out our new show, Stacey David's Restoration Series. Finally, don't forget to like us on Facebook and Instagram so you can get some behind-the-scenes footage of our weekly web series, Shifting Gears. And if you're a radio person, make sure you check out our new podcast, Tales of a Gearhead. All right, that wraps it up for us today, which means it is time for you to get out there and start working on something. It can be a car, it can be a truck, it can be a motorcycle, it can be a racetrack. Just get out there and start working on something. We'll see you next time.